From Wana Brands, welcome to Enhance Your Life. I'm your host, Jonathan Small, and each week I talk to people from all sorts of professions and backgrounds about how cannabis has enhanced their lives and how this healing plant can enrich your life too. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast. My name is John Small and I am your host. We have a really exciting panel of guests today. We're talking about a very important topic. We hear a lot about social equity in the cannabis space, but according to Marijuana Biz Daily, at least 76% of the cannabis industry is run by white founders and business owners, and about 6% of the business owners or founders identify as Hispanic or Latino, 4% identify as people of color, and 2% identify as Asian. Only 8% of cannabis CEOs are women. So there's a lot of talk, but not that much action. And my three guests today are trying to do something about this disparity. First, we are joined by Hilary Yu. Hilary is the founder of Our Academy, which is a media brand dedicated to equalizing the cannabis space through education, community building, and advocacy. And Hilary is joined by two mentors for our dream, Morris Kelly, who is the founder of SF Roots, and Kimberly Dillon, who is the founder of Frig. And we're going to find out about all of them and the important work they're doing to bring more equity to the cannabis industry. Hilary, Morris, and Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jonathan. How's it going?
Good. It's so great to talk to all three of you. Hilary, let's start with you just to tell us a little bit more about Our Academy and what it does and why you got into this line of work.
Yeah, so Our Academy is a 501c3 nonprofit pre-accelerator for social equity applicants and BIPOC entrepreneurs. And we primarily started it because at the time I was actually doing an interview series called How I Got Here, and the acronym for that is HI. And the main theme that we were finding was that quite a few social equity applicants were either potentially signing predatory deals or didn't necessarily have the resources to scale their companies. And so one of our first interviewees was Morris Kelly, and we essentially created a program based off of his needs along with a few other social equity applicants. And from that came Our Academy, which was a 15-week pre-accelerator, and we covered everything from how to vet an operating agreement to ensure that equity applicants had the opportunity to go on the offensive instead of playing defense all the time. And then also paired mentees with mentors and that met them where they're at and understood what their needs were. And so Morris actually was a mentor and a mentee and was paired with Ted Lichtenberger from Flower Company. And then Kimberly was a mentor.
Awesome. Morris, let's transition to you here. Tell us a little bit about SF Roots, what it is, what you do, what your role is there.
Yeah, my name's Morris Kelly. I'm the CEO, founder of SF Roots and Hello San Francisco. We are SF Roots. I'll start there. Is San Francisco's first social equity brand. I've been in the industry since Proposition 215 and kind of just scratched and clawed our way to stay on shelves. And once the equity program came out in San Francisco, it provided us a pathway to having our own license. Once we were able to achieve that, we have a building in San Francisco, which we opened a manufacturing license under Hello San Francisco. And we are able to incubate and help get small brands and other equity applicants on shelf into market. So we've got our brand up and going, SF Roots, and we've also got our umbrella brands that we support underneath us, just trying to make sure that the ecosphere and the industry is more reflective of what we want to see. And sometimes it just needs a lower barrier of entry. I know that's what was needed for me to be here. So me getting my license, understanding that is just making sure I put that ladder back down to let others come in the door too.
It's great. Kimberly, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and your background?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kimberly Dillon, and I'm so excited to be on this podcast today, calling from sunny Los Angeles.
Woo!
I've been in cannabis for the last 5 years. I came to it because I was actually working at Clorox, so the complete opposite of the cannabis industry. and just really was suffering from a lot of anxiety and insomnia. And I thought, there's got to be a different way. And I always say that dare worked for me. I didn't try cannabis until I was 33 years old. So I wasn't even exposed to it. And so it was a real mental shift for me. And I was hooked and I wanted to be a part of this movement. And so I joined a small startup at the time called Papa and Barkley, where I was one of the first 10 employees there. And I really saw that business grow to the behemoth it is today. So I was the chief marketing officer there and did a lot of product development, marketing, and PR for that organization, and really had a really amazing career moment. So I was there for 3 years and really set the standard for a lot of the marketing that we see today. And for me, it's always been around rising tides and lifting others as I rise. So I launched Frig, which is a plant magic brand that started in CBD and is going into THC next year. And we tap into the power of cannabis and adaptogens and mushrooms in a beverage format. That can be mixed into your smoothies, into your coffees. And I really wanted to build something that was accessible and low dose for professional and creative women like myself. And while I'm building this brand and building this ecosystem, it was incredibly important to me to make sure that our industry was representative of what I see and who the cannabis consumer is and who America is, and making sure that we are focusing on the entire sort of value chain. And I think there's been a lot of efforts on expungement and workforce development, and I'm really into representation at the ownership and capital level. And so that has been my motivation about how do we create owners and wealth in this space.
That's great. We just read a lot about these social equity programs, and it always is part of the discussion, especially early on when a state legalizes. And yet it doesn't seem to always be working. And as you know, I read those numbers in the beginning, and really, like cannabis, we were so optimistic about it sort of early on that it was going to be different with cannabis, right? But what do you think the challenge is for minorities, people of color coming into this space, that the hurdles that are hard to overcome?
I mean, specifically for social equity programs, a lot of them didn't unfortunately have the wraparound services needed to support equity applicants through the process of receiving a license, but also what to do when they got one. And I think that's where we've been trying to come in and actually create a platform for folks to speak with people across the country in different municipalities to understand what has gone wrong, specifically with potentially LA, and what we haven't done right. But in terms of the resources available, I mean, you're asking people to come into a space that is highly taxed and highly regulated. And if by definition, if you're a social equity applicant, you may not have the same access to a friends and family round as other founders may have. And you may not have the same access to friends and family that can actually write those checks in the first place. And so our thought process is to create the resources that we have available to us, which are mentors and preferential potential terms on supply chain solutions, and access to resources that can help people through that process. And so I think primarily from when it comes to certain municipalities and jurisdictions, it's really thinking about the long-term and holistic solution to helping someone through this process of becoming a business owner, and the stakes that are at play when you're signing potentially a deal, an operating agreement, either with an investor or a partner, and the education behind that. And that's something that I personally don't feel like has been available in the way that we would have liked to have seen it.
Right. And Mars, you've been in this game you mentioned for a long time, and it hasn't always been easy for you, right? What are some of the hurdles that you have faced?
Man, the hurdles. That's definitely the best way to put it. My first year in legal cannabis, I considered myself a professional dam jumper because there were just obstacle after obstacle. We had to figure out a way to either survive or to adapt. And luckily for me, I was in the industry prior to legalization, so I had a different outlook on the way things should be. and I already had a sense of the way the industry was moving. So within that first year, and there was three different changes in the regulations that had to do with packaging, testing, and one other thing. Other companies were literally falling by the wayside because, say, they invested $20,000 in packaging that wasn't childproof, and a new regulation came out. Now, for me personally, if that were to happen to me, that would have been the end of my business. But luckily, all of our packaging was childproof prior to legalization,
Right.
because we saw that coming. So another thing that happened was a lot of the farms weren't using the best growing practices. Luckily, the farm that we partnered with, we were working with them prior to legalization. We knew that they were already growing organically. So once the regulations changed on the farming and a lot of companies had to pull their product, we were able to take advantage of that because we already had clean product. But on the flip side, being a equity applicant and having to look for property in the city of San Francisco, which is extremely expensive. And one of the dictations of being an equity applicant is that you meet a certain financial threshold. Like Hilary's mentioned earlier, I was kind of taken advantage of in a predator situation on a space that was in a green zone. They gave me the lease that I could operate. By the time I came to planning to get my permits, I couldn't get permits from the city because the building was in litigation with the city for the past 8 years. But of course, these people knew that, but they were signing up multiple small business equity applicants to come open up shop because it was affordable. And moving out of that situation, it took me about 2 years to be able to find another location that was affordable in the city. And even in that opportunity, it was another blessing. It was somebody that was already in a licensed facility looking to get out of the industry and looking to give their facility to a person of color specifically. So between the lack of resources for the financing, for me personally, that was a big one. It still is. And then you look at it from the eyes of a normal equity applicant that doesn't have any experience to the cannabis industry. They've all of a sudden been handed a NASCAR and an entry to the NASCAR 500 and told like, hey, this is one of the best races you could ever be in, and you just got your shortcut in it. You should be happy, but you don't even know how to drive a car.
Right.
These people are looking at the car. They don't even know that it doesn't have any door handles, right? So it's a bigger thing on like really the past couple of years has been a lot about educating and making sure that people know what they're actually getting into, and knowing that, necessarily you don't have to be starting off as a club owner because you have this ticket. Sometimes you need to learn different steps of the way, go through mentor programs, which is what was excellent about our Dream Academy, was that it tied us to real people doing real things in the industry that had a real interest in helping us.
All right, I want to talk about our Dream Academy. Let's put a pin on that. First, I want to go to Kimberly. Kimberly, what do you do as a mentor? Tell me how it works and the kind of advice and support you give your mentees.
I think there's both the formal and the informal way of mentorship. So for me, in the actual duration of the program, it was one-on-one weekly meetings in which we were really focusing like how I structured it up. And it was really different, I think, for each mentor mentee pairing, but we came up with what the goals were that she wanted to accomplish over that time period. And then every week we would check in. We actually did have assignments. I'm not sure if I ever told you that, Hilary, but we actually
it all comes to light on Enhance Your Life.
But we actually had homework, and then we would check in on like, okay, so like, what did you accomplish in the last week? What was the hurdles? How can I help you? Who do I need to connect you with? And so we were working against a very specific exercise that she and I came up with together. Then it was also providing educational content about here's best practices for marketing and telling your story. It has evolved into here's how you pitch yourself to investors. I've reviewed people's packaging. I've reviewed people's marketing plans. And so that's all the informal goodness that kind of comes out of this, because people connect over shared experiences. And so one of the things I think is super powerful is that, yes, there is a controlled time that you're in this accelerator, but it doesn't just end the day that that program ends. You are always in contact with these people, and you are building sort of your own cohort and asking questions and giving suppliers. And one of the things we're currently working on is we got an agreement the other day and the terms were aggressive, and there's 6 other people who are looking at the same vendor and had different terms. And so really sort of that the power of the crowd and of a team that has similar goals in each other's backs is really powerful in this industry. So that's a little snapshot of
like a day in the life, a week, a week in the life.
Totally.
Hilary, let's talk about our academy and how it works actually. Like, is it a training course? Like talk to me about how it all works.
Yeah, so it's a pre-accelerator. So, I mean, think of one step before an accelerator when folks are either deciding whether or not they want to be in this industry, what they're transitioning into, what part of the supply chain they want to be a part of. And we meet people where they're at. So we have workshops and evergreen material that we offer in the form of resources. And then we have the mentors that are paired with their mentees based off of an application that they submit online. And it asks the mentees and the mentors what they're looking for, if they're open to actually working with someone that's out of state. And because there are people out on the East Coast that they're not in a legalized state and they want to learn from our screw ups. So there's that. But in terms of the actual cohort, it was twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5:00. We got on a Zoom for an hour. And then we also had group meetings. And that's a big part of it as well, is the peer learning aspect of it, and ensuring that folks had a community to go to where there was a safe space to talk about their experiences, either as entrepreneurs or people that were coming into cannabis as well. And from that came a pretty incredible experience and community that was able to learn from each other, but also work together. And so Morris is actually working with Trey Hobbs, who was a mentee and was not his actual mentee, but created a company called Neighborhood Essentials, which is out of Detroit. And Morris has helped him also launch in California through his supply chain solutions. And Kimberly started working with Tess Taylor, who has a company called Dose of Saucy, which is an infused condiments line. And so there are all these like intertwined relationships where, I mean, we have a set program, but ideally mentors will get to know the people that they're working with and potentially come from friends with them enough to open up their Rolodexes and help them with other solutions that are outside of the initial 15-week mandate.
Right. Is this something that your mentees pay for? Is this, how do you monetize this business that you have?
So it's a 501c3. And so we actually get donations from incredible companies, Wana Brands, soft plug.
Shout out to Wana.
Shout out to Wana and Cookies and companies that are open to offering donations and their time. And so when we first launched, we didn't raise a lot of money and basically just said, we were a new organization and just said, if you're willing to donate your time, that's, especially in cannabis where people are pretty busy, that was a huge ask in the first place. And so you could either make a donation, which was incredibly valuable to us, but also either donate your time once a week or offer office hours, which were essentially pro bono consulting hours. And those were coming from either accountants, attorneys, or marketing professionals who are willing to go through marketing plans. We offer the program for free to around 50. Last year, we accepted all 110 people that applied, 50 which got mentors and were paired for the 15 weeks. And that was kind of our way of really opening up and trying to be as inclusive as possible. And so it has truly been an open door policy for us.
How do you find your mentors? Do they find you? Does it go both ways?
I mean, now that they've begun to find us, but during the pandemic, we launched in the middle of the pandemic in August of 2020. And I was calling everyone that would take my call for 3 months, every single day, around like 6 calls a day. and essentially begging people to join the program. And luckily, quite a few people said yes and donated their time. And so far, it's been a great experience with all of our mentors.
Kimberly, how did you find our academy? Did they find you?
I actually don't remember, but knowing Hilary, she probably called me a bunch of times.
Right. Right.
And
you finally relented and got back to her.
And I was like, yes. But I have said yes to everything that she's asked me for, because it's rare when people are selfless and when people are building their own solution. So I think one of the things that's interesting is that it can be easy to say, oh, there's a social equity program, check the box, I'm going to follow those rules.
Right.
But what we've learned in cannabis is like the regulations in the last 5 years have changed a lot, especially if we look at California. And so some things work and some things don't work. And sometimes we're just letting things that are not work just keep going. And I think kudos to Hilary and team for saying, hey, this is not working. I know that this is the approved program, but let's augment it and build our own solutions and our own pathways. And so I think that like that spirit I'm really attracted to. That's the whole vision of cannabis, right? Of like, we can build something differently. And if you don't see it going that way, then build it. And I think that's what our academy represents.
Is this academy exclusively in California, or is it all over the country?
So we offer it nationwide, and because it was launched in 2020, we had the luxury of doing everything on Zoom.
Right.
So
That's nice.
because it's digital, we have mentioned that quite a few of our mentors are from California, but for people who are in states that are coming online, they can essentially reach into the future and learn from our mistakes.
Right.
And so that's how we met Trey Hobbs, who Morris is working with, and quite a few other people, and Morgan Underwood, who's also in Detroit and Lansing, Michigan. And so we have people that are also from Kansas and all over the country.
Yeah. Morris, you've worked both we talked about your work as a mentee, but talk about being a mentor. What are some of the things that you tell your mentees that so they can avoid some of the mistakes maybe that you made in the past? Like, what are some of the challenges that they have and that you can sort of see yourself in them 5 years ago, whatever, that you kind of help them with now?
My biggest help to the mentees is just being able to break things down, right? When you're looking at getting into the industry, it seems like a big jumble. Mm-hmm. And it kind of seems really impossible for somebody coming from our position to be able to achieve success in, because we're literally going against multi-million-dollar companies with shoestring budgets. But really being able to focus in on what you have around you, your community, your strengths, tapping into your resources, and just simplifying the equation, right? So, for instance, another mentee from our academy, Sakenya, she has Exotic Flowers Collective, and she went to a manufacturer and they wanted to charge her an excessive amount to launch her brand. And she was thinking about taking out loans to launch this brand. And part of my experience is this is not what you want to take a loan out and bet the bank on to do, especially already coming from a compromised position. So we were able to put together a product for her that was at the third of the price, super high quality. It wasn't the same volume to launch, but it was a super lower entry point that was accessible to her at that point. So she has a successfully launched brand at this point. She's already in about 4 dispensaries, and really just being able to meet people where they're at and letting them know that, yeah, this is a beast, but you know, if we work together, there's still a shot that we can make it and be successful.
Yeah. This question for Kimberly and Hilary. Why do you think there aren't more women in positions of power in cannabis? Like I mentioned at the top of the show, there was a lot of like optimism, I think, early on when cannabis started to become legal, that this was going to be different this time. Women were going to be more involved, and you both are very successful in the industry. I'm curious what you think the hurdles are there, and why we haven't seen what we expected 5 years ago.
I would probably say that the majority of, I wouldn't say all of them, but a lot of people who are decision makers have come from other industries. And so those practices have infiltrated into cannabis. We've also seen the amount of female CEOs or women identifying CEOs shift over the past few years as well, because there definitely is an old boys club in this industry as well. But Kimberly, I'm sure you have something to say on this one too.
Well, it's interesting because like in 2016, you know, it was definitely like women power, and the women were like very involved in like a lot of the edibles, because at the time that was like air quotes, not mine, but like what other people would say. Oh, you know, the guy grows and the girlfriend makes the brownies or the edibles, and that was like the girlfriend business, and it wasn't like a really viable money type situation. And then when I think Canada came online and there was a pathway for an exit, I feel like the industry changed drastically. And then you start seeing more suits, you start seeing like shell companies and these big wrap up businesses, and it really kind of squashed a lot of entrepreneurialism, and it came down to capital. And a lot of the heads that you see don't come from cannabis, but come from capital markets and know how to move and play the public markets game. And so I think what you found after 2017, I mean, most people in the capital markets and investment banking are men.
Yeah.
And so when they enter the space, who understands that and who knows how to roll up deals and buy deals and create these companies, you see men who have the capital. And so for me, capital is really the beginning and the end of a lot of this.
Right.
And who has access to it and who actually knows how to leverage it.
Yep. Where's the money coming from? Show me the money.
Exactly.
Right. All right. So if somebody is listening to this and they really want to get into the business, but are just intimidated by it for a number of reasons, what can each of you say to somebody to encourage them that success is possible, but also realistic? Like, what's a realistic message that you would give to somebody wanting to get into the cannabis industry right now?
I would say find your tribe and your community in this space, and find friends and that will have your back, that you can also work with. And it is scary and it is incredibly daunting. Entrepreneurialism across the board is terrifying, and you've got to be a little bit crazy to want to do something like this, but it is possible if you put your mind to it and you work hard and you show up for yourself and for others. I think that's the one thing that I've found about the cannabis community specifically, is that it is a collective if you let it, and people are willing to show up for you if you show up for them. And so if you come in with a collaborative mindset, I think that it would do wonders.
Yeah. Morris, what do you tell people who might be interested in getting into this business? Are there mistakes that you see people make early on, or are there certain people that should really not be getting into the business?
I mean, I think there's a place for everybody. One big mistake is like thinking that you have to be one thing when maybe you might be suited for another.
Right.
You know, and I think that comes with like education on the industry. I think that's super important. And one way that I gained a lot of my knowledge was by volunteering and just being eager to learn, and got access to facilities to be able to learn how to make hash, to be able to learn how to cultivate. And just that old school eagerness and being able to add value to somebody else's current situation who might have more knowledge or might be at a place that you want to be is always a great thing. I like to use the analogy of like, if somebody asks me how to do something, I might give them a short answer, but if somebody like volunteers their time at my facility or says they want a job, and now they're at the facility, and 9 times out of 10 they can ask me any question they want, and I'm going to probably give them a more detailed answer. So it's like, you know, that you don't always have to start at the top. You can definitely work your way up, gain the knowledge that you need in some of these entry level positions. Because truth be told, I've seen people come from other industries and start as a bud tender just to be able to gain that knowledge of, how to talk to people. What is the plant? What are the products?
Yeah.
And you can get far by taking a job at a facility just to gain the knowledge and the resources to move to the next step.
Kimberly, we'll end this with you. What is your advice to those looking to get into the industry?
Well, first I want to respond because I think what Morris said is really powerful. And like sometimes there might be ego in like being like a bud tender, depending on your age or where you've been. But I've actually met some incredibly successful are sometimes people who have 4 kids or people who have a whole other career who've been bud tenders on the weekends or did bud tender stints and have learned so much, because this leads into my advice, which is really around, and it echoes Hilary's too, but I really think this is an industry. It's about who you know and who knows you, and about your reputation and really building out that community. But I think it's community plus, like, not everyone's going to be in your tribe and you still should know them too. So I think this is really about relationships and people. If you think about the origins of how cannabis has existed for the last 100 years in this country, like, it is about who you know and who your plug has been. And that same thing is very true now. And the last thing I'll say is that I still think that this is very early days and there's a place for everyone, and that there is a way, and not to get intimidated, because man, the tides turn every second in this industry. You just really never know. And so to get envious or to copy someone else's playbook, that playbook is outdated the instant you are made aware of it. Like, it's just, you really have to lean into your intuition and your own, and trusting yourself and blaze your own way.
No pun intended. One of the things that has always struck me when I talk to cannabis entrepreneurs is you can't just get into it to make some money. Like, it's just too hard an industry. I mean, everybody who's an entrepreneur in cannabis says this is like the hardest thing I've ever done. And it seems like you have to have somewhat of a passion for the plant or for the industry or just health or whatever it is that is motivating you. Do you guys agree with that? It just seems like it's very hard to fake it and just be there to make money.
I would definitely agree with that. This industry will chew you up and spit you out because it's not traditional business. Well, it is traditional business, but the implications from the government that are put on you for tax and other liabilities, it definitely makes it stressful, because you won't have the same profit margins that you would traditionally have selling products. So it's definitely, for me personally, it's like I came into the industry when it was more based out of compassion and need for medicine, getting medicine to people. So you kind of have to have that tough skin to bear the brunts of the storms. My first 2 years in legal cannabis, we were robbed every year. And literally having to clean up, pick myself up, call my office manager to continue having that meeting, to continue pushing through business that day, because if I didn't, I would definitely not survive. That takes a lot of grit and gut, and you definitely have to be built for it. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
But
it's rewarding though, right? I mean, you guys are all living proof that there is.
I wouldn't be in any other industry.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Hilary, Morris, Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to find out more about our academy, what should they do?
You can find us at thisisourdream.com/our academy, or follow us on Instagram. It's at thisis.ourdream, or follow Morris or Kim.
You guys are on Insta? How do we follow you guys?
Yeah, you can follow us at sfrootsca on Instagram, or at www.sfrootsca.com.
And then you can find Frig at GetFrig on Instagram. And then the website is getfrig, FRIGG.com.
Awesome. Well, I thank you all for doing this and for doing what you do, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks for having us, Jonathan.
Enhance Your Life is brought to you by Wana. the #1 infused product in North America. Wijna's entire process is designed to deliver the same great experience time after time. They have spent years fine-tuning their recipes so that their products are delicious, consistent, and potent. For more information, head on over to WANAbrands.com. That's Wijna, W-A-N-A, brands.com.